In the previous lesson, we did some very, very basic fills on my rooster, at least my interpretation as a city folk person of a rooster, and colored it in ways that no rooster would ever be colored. It's time to give equal time to the stroke. Now remember, objects, object-oriented program, objects can have a fill and a stroke. They can have a fill or a stroke, or they can have no stroke or no fill. Up to you. Now, I mentioned something to you earlier. I said that even though we are working with these basic shapes, that a lot of very complex objects are nothing but basic shapes put together, and I want to prove that point. So let's go up to the ellipse tool. Let's start with this one. Come over here and draw me an ellipse, something, say, about like that. And I'm going to use my arrow keys, move that down just a little bit. I like using those arrow keys. That makes life easier. Now, we're getting ahead of ourselves in a couple of areas because we will talk more about this stuff later, but I want you to go to the pen tool up here. Now, what it does is basically takes smooth paths and converts them to straight, or vice versa. So if I click on this anchor point, it will convert it into a straight, and now you've got that kind of like straight look down here, which is what I want. Go up here and select the direct selection tool. Now, what you do is you make a little marquee right around that piece right there. So that's the only thing that's selected. Now make sure it is selected. Go over to your rotate tool. Come to the top of the shape right about there and hold the Alt key down. That's the Option key on a Mac. And you'll get the rotate dialog box. 15 is a number that's divisible into 360. I don't care what you use, but make sure it's divisible exactly into 360. 15 is going to be fine. I'll then come down here and click copy and watch what happens. Because remember, that's the only thing that's selected. That's exactly what I want. Now, what's next? Don't do anything. Don't touch anything until you do this. Hold down the Control key, Command key on a Mac, Control in Windows, and press D. Check it out. The sun has got its hat on. Okay, it came all the way around again because we had a number divisible by 360. Pick up your regular selection tool and go ahead and get rid of the original. We don't need it anymore. It's out of here. Now we're not done. Pick up your ellipse tool again, and I need to find the center and draw out a circle from center to cover those up. How do I do that? Well, I could eyeball it, make sure it's the right size, and move it if I need to, but I'll tell you what. I'm going to press Command, and that's Control in Windows, Command on a Mac, U. Now that's a shortcut for turning on smart guides. You may already have them on. But if I do that, I can then see where I am and get an idea of exactly where I think center should be. And then, well, that's probably it right there. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, Option key on a Mac, and begin drawing, and the Shift key too. So the Alt or Option key and the Shift key, and get it to the point of covering. Don't go too far. Say right about there. Let's see what happens if we stop right there. Well, I'm going to turn off, number one, I'm going to turn off my smart guides with a Control or Command U. That's one mean buzzsaw, but I need them all together as one piece. So again, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I want to show you something that I love, one of my favorite panels. Go to the word window and go down to Pathfinder. I love these things. They are so cool. They allow you to do all kinds of stuff, and we will talk more about them later, but make sure you have everything selected. So let's pick up our selection tool, give ourselves a selection, and click this one right here. It's called Unite. Watch what happens. It will take as many shapes as you have and make them one. One simple shape, an ellipse tool, drawing two things, making, I don't know, a sun, a buzzsaw, a ninja throwing star. Simple shapes make complex objects. Now let's close this out. We don't need it. We do have the fill here, so let's give it a color like the sun. Why not? Let me do this now. Let me go ahead and pick up my zoom tool, and let's zoom in on an area. That's probably more than what we need. I'll use the shortcuts. Remember what they are. The Command key or the Control key along with the plus and minus keys. That's Control Windows, Command Mac. And let me move that over just a little bit like this. Let's talk about the stroke. Let me go ahead and pick up my selection tool first. And let's come over here and pick up stroke right there and pull it out. Now all I got is weight. I want more than that. A lot of these panels over here have hidden features. And if you click here and say show options, well, there you go. Now, we don't have an open shape. That's what capping is, like at the beginning or end of a open stroke. We do have corners. That's these. And if I come over here and say smooth the corners, now watch. It's called a round. See how it rounded out the corners as opposed to making them pointy? And we also have another one here that kind of flattens them out. Makes them a little bit flatter on the edges. I think I'm going to go back to rounded. I kind of like those. Gives it a softer look. We have the align stroke option here. Now to show you that, let me make this even bigger. Now you can see that little line right there, which represents the actual stroke itself, which is being wrapped with a weight of 1 point on either side. So that's a half a point on either side. Let's make that a little bit bigger by clicking there so you can see that. Okay, that helps out just a little bit. Well, actually, let's just do 2. Aligning the stroke on either side. Aligning the stroke so all the stroke goes on the inside, and aligning it so it's all on the outside. It's up to you. Now, we played with this a little bit earlier on dash lines. If you want a sun with dash lines, go ahead and go for it. Let me go ahead and double click on the zoom tool to get us down to a more acceptable size. Now let me pick up, say this right here, and draw a line segment. If I hold the shift key, it's nice and straight. So yes, if you want a dashed line, you can do that. This is the dash in the gap, and you can have up to 3 complete sets of dashes and gaps. Make it look like Morse code if you want to. We do have arrowheads if you want to use those. And if we do an arrowhead, as you can see, we then have a scaling option here for the width and the height of that particular arrowhead. We can also say, place the arrowhead either at the very end of the anchor point or the center. Just like that, up to you. And you do have a profile here to change the way the stroke looks. But let me show you something else real quick. Let's take that off dash line for a second. Come over here and pick up this tool right here, which is the width tool. Now the width tool, when you select an object like this, you can basically start doing this kind of stuff to it. Make it into a spear, the spear of destiny, changing the width. These down here then become the profile, which you can see up here too. That's a custom one. You can change it to something else if you want to. But if you draw your own, it becomes custom, if you will. And you can change the width. Now that's not new, it's relatively new. It used to be a stroke was a stroke was a stroke. You know, it had a thickness and that was it. With these new tools like variable width, we can create things like stems on a plant, all kinds of different ways we can utilize it just using the stroke. What we used to do before is actually make an object and fill it, and then use the curved path to simulate what the stroke would have been. We don't have to do that anymore. So strokes and fills, we did fills in the previous lesson, control what an object is in Adobe Illustrator. That's not all, but those are just the basics.